All right. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Inca outfit. So, before I explain the outfit, you ought to know a bit about the history of the Inca Empire, but first let me catch my breath. Enjoy the Inca ambush, yes? Any enemy of the Inca Empire would have seen a sight just like that. And would have been terrifying, huh? Imagine, out of the jungle, even in the Andes mountains, just a horde of swathes of Inca troops, huh? Been very scary. So, let us begin. So, the Inca Empire. As we can see, we are out here in Peru, and the year is 1471. Let me explain this one thing before I explain the rest of the outfit. This outfit can encapsulate quite a few eras. It can encapsulate 1400s Inca and even 1500s Inca. However, by the 1500s, the Inca Empire capitulated and things would have changed a bit, but I'll explain that soon. So, without further ado, the Inca Empire. So many people wonder how the Inca Empire started, and it's known by some and not known by many others. So the Inca Empire started, as with many empires that have very relatively few records, we only have the oral traditions left. So, according to the Inca legend, the empire began with a cave. So it wasn't even an empire back then because it wasn't imperialistic, it was an expansionist. So basically, what happened was, out of this cave came the first Inca. Well, the first few Incas, because actually there were 4 brothers and 4 sisters. And of these 4 brothers and 4 sisters who emerged from a cave, they basically would become the ancestors of all the Inca people. And out of a few other caves came less significant people who would represent all the other tribes in the sphere of the Incas. So basically, Western South America. So one of the brothers, his name was Ayamanco. And Ayamanco was a brave man, and he led his siblings to go and find a new land. And unfortunately, his siblings didn't make the journey, so he technically was the last survivor. But he led the rest of the people, and this is another blurry piece of history. Is where did these people come from? Hard to say. But essentially, Ayamanco led what would become the Inca people to go find a new land. So Ayamanco was equipped with the golden staff, and blessed by the gods, he would go and stick his staff into the ground. If the staff did not stick into the ground, it would be bad land. And if it did stick in, well, this would become the new site of the new city. So after trying and trying, sticking in the staff, it didn't stay in. Eventually Ayamanco arrived in what would become Cusco. And he stuck it into the land, into this lovely valley, and it stayed. And this was the birth of Cuzco, basically the main city of the Incas. So Cuzco is in modern-day Peru, so I might be able to have a map to show you where Cuzco is. So Ayamanco then became the first Sapa Inca, which is basically the Inca leader, the Inca emperor. And he became known as Manco Inca, or Manco Capac. So yeah, Manco Inca was the first Sapa Inca, the first emperor. And now the next 8 Sapa Incas have been lost to history. There's a few, apparently we might know, it's hard to say, but it's so blurry that we basically don't really know who the next 8 kings are. So this all happened with Ayamanco in the 13th century. So in the 1200s, this is technically medieval times. Magna Carta was being signed in England. Marco Polo had gone to China. The Mongols were on their invasion. The Inca Empire began. So Ayamanco was living in the 13th century. We're not exactly sure the exact dates. But fast forward about nearly 200 years, and one of the first well-known Incas is now emerged, and his name is Kusi Yupanqui. So Kusi Yupanqui, he was basically, you could compare him to Napoleon and Alexander the Great. You'll see why, because Kusi Yupanqui went on a great conquest, and he made the Inca Empire what would become the Inca Empire. Instead of being a small little tribe kingdom around Cuzco, after the death of Kusi Yupanqui in 1471, the Inca Empire was in full motion, and after Kusi Yupanqui would be Tupac Yupanqui, and I'll get there now, but basically that's the time of my outfit. So the time of Kusi Yupanqui is when my outfit is based. A typical soldier fighting in Kusi Yupanqui's army. Now what is so interesting about Kusi Yupanqui is he became known as Pachacuti. So Pachacuti is basically the Quechua word for cataclysm, or the turning around of the world. So Pachacuti was named quite appropriately because he basically brought thunder straight down into the Inca Empire and created a huge conquest. He initiated a big conquest. And so yeah, Pachacuti is one of the most famous Sapa Incas. I'd probably say second most famous, because the one that I'm about to say is probably the most famous. So that's about the time of my outfits. Just one of Pachacuti's soldiers going and expanding the Inca Empire. So after Pachacuti died in 1471, Tupac Yupanqui became the Sapa Inca. And again, further expansion. I think it was him who conquered the Chimu people. Just remember, before the Inca Empire, there were other people before, and the Inca Empire, just like so many empires in history, merely tapped into an already rich history. Before the Incas were the Chimu people, and before the Chimu people were the Tiwanaku people, and all these different civilizations came before, and the Incas simply stole their architecture and built onto it drastically. So yeah, it's anyway. So now after Tupac Yupanqui came Huayna Capac, and Huayna Capac is quite a famous one because he basically predicted that he would be the last Sapa Inca and that the world would end soon. And he was actually wrong. He was not the last Sapa Inca, but he was actually not far off, because it would be his son that would be the last Sapa Inca. He actually had 2 sons, Atahualpa and Huascar. Atahualpa is the most famous Sapa Inca after Pachacuti, because Atahualpa was the very last Sapa Inca who ruled a free Inca Empire, and he was reigning when the Spanish arrived. So he met Francisco Pizarro. So yes, Huayna Capac having predicted the end of the Inca Empire, you're probably wondering, what's it with Mesoamerica and the world ending? You know, the Mayan calendar predicting the world would end in 2012, and I'm pretty sure it didn't, because we've survived it. So you first have to know the Milky Way galaxy. Yes, the Milky Way galaxy is tied in with the Incas. Okay, not hello, future person. We need to understand their mythology. So the Incas believed in a few prominent deities. The top three prominent deities was Viracocha, basically the creator deity. Viracocha created the world and created the caves out of which the first Incas would come out, including Ayamanco. The next one is Inti. Inti is the sun god. Inti basically was the sun. The Inca worshipped the sun. And they believed that the Sapa Inca was literally the son of the sun. So every Sapa Inca was the son of Inti. And what's so interesting is a parallel between Inca and Egypt is the Incas also mummified their Sapa Incas. So by the time of Atahualpa, the last Sapa Inca, they had a collection of all the previous Sapa Incas mummified. And they believed that when the next Sapa Inca was born and became the emperor, he would take place as the son. So, the son of the sun, sorry, not the sun. And so yeah, that's Viracocha, Inti, and Ilyapa. Ilyapa is basically the god of storms, the god of thunder. So yeah, these are some of the main deities. There are a few more, but it's just gonna be too complicated. Let's just stick with the three big deities there. But Viracocha was the big creator deity, but eventually Inti took prominence. And they say that by the time of Pachacuti, he had spread the Inti cult, and Inti was the state deity. So it was technically polytheistic. It wasn't really monotheistic, but the sun was so important that it literally casts a shadow over all the other deities. So the reason that they believe the world was ending is actually a lining up of stars and also the Milky Way. So what's so interesting is the Inca, they were based in the Andes Mountains. So Cusco is in the Andes Mountains. So the jungle, the Amazonian jungle, was behind the Andes and was the edge of the Inca Empire. And the west, the west of the Inca Empire, the Pacific coast, was basically like a desert. So they mostly lived in the mountains, yes. That's why I chose this hilly place to be in Peru. So they had a very good view of the sky at night. I mean, imagine there was no artificial light, and when you look up, you're so high up, the atmosphere is literally thinner. They have a slightly better view of the sky, the night sky, and they could see the Milky Way galaxy, the Milky Way band, as it was in full glory. And the Milky Way band, for those who don't know, is basically, the galaxy that we're in, the Milky Way galaxy. If this is the galaxy, we are pretty much near the edge of the Milky Way, not right at the edge, but near the edge. So that in that perspective, when you look at the Milky Way, we're looking into the Milky Way. And you can basically see what looks like a band, which is the flat disk of the Milky Way, because centrifugal force has made the Milky Way have a disk shape, not a scattered shape like an elliptical galaxy. Anyway, enough of that. Inca Empire first. But the Incas had such a good view of the Milky Way band, and as we know, the Milky Way is not just comprised of stars, but also dust, which are nebulae, and they create basically what looks like shadows. So the Inca Empire, quite uniquely to many other civilizations, they created constellations not in the stars only, but in the dust clouds of the Milky Way. There is a llama constellation that they saw in the Milky Way. Using the clouds. Isn't that fascinating? So the Inca, they literally called in Quechua, they called the Milky Way the river. So they viewed that the sky was like a big cosmic river from which life came from. And they believed that when certain stars would be aligned with the Milky Way, it would create an opening for the gods to come onto Earth. And this happened frequently, but then already in ancient Inca times, so this is going way before Ayamanco. I think it was the 7th century. This is literally the Dark Ages in Europe. Was ancient times in the Inca, South America. There was no such thing as Inca. But astronomers had foreseen bad omens in the sky, and they had seen how stars were not aligning up with the Milky Way, and this was bad news because it meant the gods were now losing touch. So now we go to Huayna Capac's time, and this is an example of an incredible coincidence in history. According to the Incas, they saw this misalignment, and it happened pretty much just before the Spanish arrived. Isn't that incredible? So it actually, Huayna was not too far off in that he predicted the Inca Empire would end. And lo and behold, in the next generation, the Spanish arrived. Already the Spanish with Cortes had arrived in Central America, and by 1521 had conquered the Aztecs. The Incas still didn't know about this. It was only in 1528 that Pizarro first arrived in Peru. But smallpox had already spread, and the Incas apparently heard rumors about these viracochas coming into their land. The reason the Inca called the Spanish viracochas is so fascinating. Viracocha was portrayed to the Inca even before the Spanish arrived as a bearded, pale man. Another huge coincidence. So naturally, when the Spanish arrived, they linked the Spanish to Viracocha, the creator deity, because the Spanish, naturally being from Spain, were lighter skinned and often had beards. Because funny enough, the Andes genetics don't really allow for beards, so that's why I've shaved. But even you can still sort of see. So yeah, so naturally the Incas, when Pizarro first arrived in 1528, he literally had a slight contact with the Incas, but it failed, and he only then came again a few years later. Yeah, basically, how the Inca Empire ended was Pizarro had brought in a new band of conquistadors. There's that famous image of him drawing a line in the beach where he says, "Those who want to cross with me will find riches beyond their dreams. Those who want to stay can go back to Hispaniola," which was the Spanish base in the New World. You guys are not true Castilians. And apparently only 16 people crossed the line to join Pizarro, but eventually as Pizarro realized he had stumbled across a vast empire, more and more came, so that by the time Pizarro had met Atahualpa, there were 168 Spaniards. So the Inca Empire essentially ended when, remember Huayna Capac's two sons, Huascar and Atahualpa? They basically were fighting each other. They disagreed. So for 5 years, they basically ruled separately. Atahualpa in the north and Huascar in Cusco. Because Huayna Capac died without allocating an heir. Although apparently one source, his heir did die, so his third brother. Oh, this is complicated. But as far as we know, he didn't have an heir. So basically each brother would disagree and believe they're the rightful heir. But eventually in the last couple years, they were in full war. The Inca Empire was in civil war. And already they had been ravaged by smallpox. So imagine that plus civil war, the Spanish had the perfect window of invasion. So Pizarro entered at a time when Atahualpa had just defeated Huascar. So Atahualpa naturally was the favored son because he was more charismatic and more brave. Huascar was apparently, according to chronicles, was more timid. So Huascar had a following in Cusco, but Atahualpa had the following of the army. The army followed Atahualpa, so you can imagine how he naturally had the edge over Huascar. So after defeating his brother, he now decided to go parading into Cusco and be crowned as the next Sapa Inca. However, something interrupted him. Word from his Chasqui runners, basically the messengers of the Inca Empire, were delivering news of these strangers who'd arrived. And Atahualpa was actually more intrigued than he was fearful. He was not at all scared. He wanted to meet these people, so he had organized prior with the Spanish to meet at Cajamarca. So Cajamarca is a city many miles above Cusco, north of Cusco. So Atahualpa had agreed to meet the Spanish at Cajamarca. The Spanish, of course, were there before, so they had dispersed and hidden themselves into all the buildings. Pizarro wanted to draw on the wisdom from Hernan Cortes, who's conquered the Aztecs, and emulate him. And basically, he knew that if he cut off the head, the emperor, if he was to capture the emperor, he would literally cut off the head of the Inca Empire, paralyzing it, just as Cortes had done with Montezuma and the Aztecs. So come the arrival, and the Inca army is literally numbering in the tens of thousands. So Atahualpa naturally has no fear. He thinks, what is a couple of strangers what do they have on my tens of thousands of strong army? So Atahualpa arrived, and literally they filled the plaza in Cajamarca to the brim. Imagine like sardines fitting into a tin. So and Pizarro hid himself. And so, of course, Atahualpa was like, where's everyone? Where the Spanish? And out of the shadows emerges one of the priests. De Valverde was Pizarro's priest who had come with to convert the natives. Very sad how the Spanish had literally used Catholicism as a weapon against the Inca. So nonetheless, De Valverde came with the translator to Atahualpa and gave him a Bible, and basically decreed that if you do not believe in the one and true God, that we will use our weapons against you, and we will do whatever we can and whatever we have the means to eradicate you and make you suffer. And if you choose this, it will all be your fault. So it was basically an ultimatum. And Atahualpa picked up the Bible, and naturally having no way to contextualize what this thing is, he obviously tried to listen, like, is this really the God? Because the Spanish had said, this is the word of God. So he's like, where's the word? Atahualpa didn't know what to do with this. And Atahualpa had heard about these foreigners, that they had actually been pillaging places in his empire. So he threw the Bible down to the ground and condemned the foreigners for stealing from his empire. And he had basically had enough of them. And at this, De Valverde, of course, viewed this as being blasphemy, throwing down the word of God. So he was allegedly ran and called for all the Christians to unite against these heathens. And then there was a moment of silence, and then bang! The Spanish cannons opened fire on the Inca army stationed in Cajamarca, and literally it was a massacre. Some people in most history calls it the Battle of Cajamarca, but apparently no Spanish was killed. So it's more like the massacre of Cajamarca. And apparently 7,000 Inca lost their lives. And Atahualpa was captured by Pizarro and held and detained. So now the Inca Empire had lost its head. But for a whole year, Pizarro was negotiating with Atahualpa, and there's apparently he created an admiration for him. The two leaders developed a bit of an admiration, although apparently Atahualpa was a bit looked down on Pizarro because he couldn't read or write, even though they claimed that the word of God was here and Pizarro couldn't read it. So after a year of negotiating, and Atahualpa having concluded that these were merely pirates and that he would try to appease them with gold, which they agreed. So after a year of collecting gold, Atahualpa promised to fill the room up once over with gold and twice more with silver, which after a year they did. Atahualpa had delivered his promise, but Pizarro, knowing and being pressured by his men, knew that if they released the Sapa Inca, he could now unite the Inca people in an uprising against the Spanish. So they had just about no choice but to kill him. So they decided they would burn Atahualpa as a heathen. However, Pizarro wanted Atahualpa's body to be preserved. So he said to Atahualpa that if you convert to Christianity, then you'll be strangled as a Christian and not burned as a heathen. So Atahualpa listened and agreed. So Atahualpa was tied to a pole in the public square and literally garroted. So he was strangled to death with a little wooden device that pulls the rope tight around your neck. And that was the death of Atahualpa and essentially the Inca Empire. For the next 40 years, the Inca resisted, though. Unlike the Aztecs, who collapsed after the death of Montezuma, The Inca Empire still technically survived for 40 years, but they lasted as an insurgency. There was even a full-on battle for Cuzco, which the Incas lost their best general, and the Spanish simply were just arriving in too many numbers with their advanced technology, that the Inca Empire was reduced to a state of guerrilla warfare. And come the 1470s, and the last Sapa Inca was found, captured, and executed, and that was the second official end of the Inca Empire. So yeah, the Inca Empire has a very incredibly rich history. So I thought that now I can show you the attire, and after that I've got another surprise. I'm sure you can guess what it might be if you've seen the Egyptian reenactment video. But first of all, let's get to the outfit. The typical attire of an Inca man would have comprised of a wool tunic. So basically, your tunic would have been made out of mostly by alpaca and llama wool. So unfortunately, this tunic is actually predominantly cotton, but apparently the Incas did know about cotton, but they would have predominantly used wool from the llama. So we can imagine this is a llama wool tunic. And you know what is so interesting about the tunic is the Inca Empire was so efficient in control that they literally monitored the production of clothes. So there was actually a pretty uniform standard of clothing. Apparently the state even provided clothes for the people. So I will have my typical state issued tunic made out of alpaca wool. And they are woven from the start. So this is a woven cotton. It was just material that I got, that I shaped. They would have actually, funny enough, woven the sides so there wouldn't be a seam, a very obvious seam over here generally. So I've obviously had to sew that up together. But nonetheless, and a hole left for the arms like this, so you see. And what's so interesting is the neck design. It's unlike a Roman tunic where it's an oval shape going that way. This is more of an oval shape going that way. So they would design in a bit of a V shape for the head. So yeah, that's how you know it's Inca, if it has this type of collar. Cool, hey? You can see the back as well. Nice. Okay, so next thing is the waist belt. So most Incas didn't even wear a waist belt. They would have worn their tunics like this. Give me a minute. There we are. They would have just worn their tunics like this. However, field experience shows that it's just not nice, because you feel the wind coming up, you're more exposed to the elements, and you're a little bit more cumbersome like this, as opposed to having some way of girdling your tunic like this. I've seen some sources of Incas being depicted with a bit more like a belt, because you can see it's tight, because generally the tunics would have been woven so that around the waist area would be a different pattern, creating the illusion of a belt. But I've seen sources of Incas wearing something that looks like it's gathering the tunic up. So this is a mixture of practical archaeology and a couple sources. And I do think it still is very nice, creates that nice Inca look. Oh, I cut my foot. Ow. Speaking of shoes, here the shoes are. So Incas didn't really wear shoes a lot, but they did wear shoes. Many of them did wear shoes. Inca shoes were actually woven, and sadly I don't have a pair of woven sandals, but I might get some soon. But for now, just bare feet. It was common to have bare feet in the Inca Empire. You've probably noticed these, the tassels. Don't they look quite nice, huh? So tassels were worn mostly by warriors. And I've even seen runners wearing them in reenactments and depictions. But it was more of a thing to look more intimidating, and yeah, more of a warrior culture. I don't think your everyday man would have worn tassels on the legs. But since I'm a warrior, I wear the tassels. Also underwear, yeah, I'm wearing modern shorts, as you can see, because I want to be decent. And this tunic I made to an exact design in a museum that was found and covered and made. I'll try and include a picture perhaps this side. So this is what it would have, this is what it looked like. And I'll also put a picture of my tunic up when it's off and spread out flat so you can compare. Cool, huh? So, yeah, underwear, they would have worn loins. Not too different to Roman and ancient Greek loins, but more stringy. I've seen like stringy. And I've seen a few sources, but they basically would have worn loins, probably made out of wool. So yeah. So, Inca weaponry. So if you want to reenact just a typical man, which I did in my first impression, you simply just wear the tunic and wear the long hair. You can wear a headband, but I don't really see these. I'll explain these, but yeah, and the war paint, you wouldn't have war paint on. So yeah, you just wear a tunic. You can be bare feet, wear a headband over your wig, and there you're an Inca. Perfect. So before I get to this, I'll explain this first, then the weapons. Sorry. So the headband. You see, it's quite common to wear headbands in the Inca Empire, even people who weren't soldiers. So yep, there we go. However, these little discs, these would be bronze discs. So check here. Wait, but the Inca didn't have metal like bronze and stuff. They used stone and obsidian for their weapons. They had bronze. Yes, they didn't have iron. They didn't know about iron. So the Spanish had an edge over the Incas when they arrived. But the Incas did make some weapons out of bronze, but that was reserved for the elite. The elite would have had a mace like this, but made out of bronze, a bronze head. And in terms of these little decorations over here, they're not actually earrings, they're attached to the headband. They create that really nice Mesoamerican look. Again, it's a bit of a stretch with the outfit because bronze pretty much was for the upper class. I used to think, I was completely of the impression, and I even did it in Stone to Steam with my Inca show, that, oh, every Inca has gold and it's so common that they didn't have a problem giving it to the Spanish. No, actually the Inca revered gold as well. The Incas viewed gold as being the sweat of the sun and silver as being the tears of the moon. So gold and silver were literally metals associated with the gods. So hence it's only reserved for the emperor and the priest class and the elite class. So in terms of me, my impression is technically a warrior and a runner. So I would run and relay messages, but I am armed so that I can fight off enemies like the Chimu who is subduing, or the forest people who are another big enemy of the Incas. And so yeah, me wearing bronze. So this is actually homemade. It's plastic painted with bronze paint, as you can see. But it has that lovely bronze look. This would have been probably worn by the elites only. You even see the Sapa Inca wearing a headband with these on. But as to whether a common runner / warrior, it's a bit hard to say. I especially chose not to do gold. So gold would have been, yeah, absolutely. Gold is for the elites. Bronze, yeah, maybe I'm a slightly upper class runner, but this is stuff that we just don't have the records. The Inca's writing system is not a lot of records, but I'll explain it now. Hold on. And so yeah, so I'm going for this image because it just really is so nice and charismatic. And the war paints, they would have used like reds and blacks. Looks pretty cool, hey? As to the exact patterns they did, I've also gone over the eyes and have 2 black stripes going down. In a documentary I saw where the Incas were being portrayed, I saw one warrior with this pattern I've drawn on, black and red. So I've emulated that. The documentary was pretty veritable. I'll try link it. It was a very good video. So yeah, that's another example of I just can't find Inca records of what they would have done, so I just simply relied on other reenactments, just as you might rely on this reenactment. And yep, feather right over here, and technically this is gold. Yep, okay, that's a little bit too elite, but it just looks so good, eh? Doesn't it look so good? Yeah, gold, you know. So this is a lovely pattern that looks so Inca. It's just a generic material I found at the fabric shop that looked pretty Inca, and I tried to emulate that look. And I even used it to create the attachments for the bronze discs. I've seen headbands worn being made out of woven material, and also plain colors, and also very interesting, you know the cords for gutra, very similar to that. It's basically like corded woven cords that sit on your head without excess tie. So I've seen long ones that dangle, because this is simply a bandana type of style that you just tie on the back of your head, you see, but it's quite short. I've seen ones that are quite long, which I think I prefer, but nonetheless this is also quite nice. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty simple outfit, huh? So the weapons. For those more into the martial side of history, if you want to make an Inca warrior outfit, easiest way to go, a mace. Simple as that. And what's so cool is this is the most common weapon in the Inca Empire. They used bows, the famous jungle bowmen. You find that warriors of certain regions would be have more prestige with certain weapons. So you find that the people of the Amazonian jungles recruited into the Inca Empire. The Inca army would have been bowmen, and I am actually Chimu. So Chimu were people conquered by the Incas during Pachacuti's time. But yeah, that's my ancestry. So I'm technically a Chimu runner. So the Chimu were very famous for their maces, and maces were all over. They were very common infantry weapons, and reason is, check at this. They are just so simple. Look at this. It's literally a stick with an obsidian disc hammered on. And generally your sticks would taper, but I've just made the disc slightly smaller and I really whacked this thing on. So yeah, they would have used maces very commonly, and it's a very deadly weapon, hey, very deadly. It can break skulls. So the material being used would have been stone and obsidian for your common soldiers, and for the more elites, as I said, they would have used bronze and even gold infused with silver, or silver infused with bronze. The Incas were very good at metalworking, so they had all these really great combinations, but they just didn't have iron, sadly. So they find that when the Incas came into contact with the Spanish, their obsidian would literally smash on the Spanish steel. So yeah, the Inca Empire had a huge disadvantage in that sense. They were technically still in the Stone Age and the Bronze Age, but they had a recording system, and they built Machu Picchu without using the wheel or without using horses. So incredible. So Machu Picchu, we're still not sure what it was meant for, but some theorize it was built as an estate for Pachacuti, like basically a royal house. Interesting, eh? So yeah, this I've actually made out of wood, since I don't have obsidian, but I've painted it to look like obsidian, and check out the way I've carved the wood to look like chips of stone. Obsidian is igneous stone. It's yeah, so it's stone. Cool, hey? Look at that. And I have strung this cord around to stop it from sliding around, even though it was not going to slide. And I've put a leather handle on. Leather was known in the Inca Empire. They even ate llamas and guinea pigs, so they ate meat. But leather wouldn't have been very common, so I should have a technically woven wool handle. But yeah, you can say it's alpaca leather. And to go with this, your primary means of defense is a shield. So an Inca shield is, there are many shapes, but the most common shapes would have been a circle, a square, and a rectangle. You mostly see the squares. And it would have been literally this size. The square would have even been smaller, like this size, so like that size. And they would have attached wool on the bottom to act as a way of stopping projectiles hitting your feet. And that was simply it. And they would have even covered it with an extra layer of wool with some pattern like the tunic. But I'm saying I've gone for like a mass production look where it's just quick, cheap weapon, quick, cheap shield, and you're ready to go. Yeah, and a simple handle at the back. And here we go. I'm an Inca warrior ready for battle. Yeah! 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 Just a typical Chimu runner. Someone who would run relaying messages. What would they have written messages on? This is now the cool surprise I've brought you. I've got 2 surprises. I'll start with this one surprise. Oh, one more weapon. Okay, fine. One more weapon. The sling. So the Inca would have called it a haraka. And the haraka is not too different at all from your ancient slings. However, the Inca used mostly woven materials. They would have woven a sling together. I'm using more of an ancient Roman style sling where it's leather. But nonetheless, yeah, this is a sling, and I can even show you how to sling. So how to sling is, a sling is comprised of 3 parts. So firstly the pouch, and then the left arm and the right arm. So one of the arms has a loop on it. Can you see there? And you would put your middle finger through that loop, and then you would load the pouch with the projectile like a stone, and then take the other arm, thread it all the way up so that you have this setup right here. All right, now you're ready to sling. And how you do it is you swing, you create an arc with your arm, with your wrist actually, and swing, 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 and the trigger is where you let go of the arm between your thumb and index like that. Whoop. And that in turn opens the pouch, throwing the projectile. Would you guys like to see how to sling then? So the surprise that I bought is the food that the Inca people would have eaten, and the language that they used. Well, see, they didn't have a written language. They simply used something, but I'll show you that now. But first, the food. So, oh, I can even use my shield as a table. Ah. Are you ready to see Inca food? Well, here we are. Ta-da! Wow. Inca food is quite simple. Here we go. So the most staple in the Inca diet would have been potatoes. So Incas had potatoes. Oh, multitude of potatoes. They had sweet potatoes, you even get purple potatoes, so many different types of potato. So most people in the Inca Empire would have lived and died on this potato, as well as corn. So I've already eaten this. So yeah, corn. Ah. What's that? What's that? So Incas would have lived on corn and potatoes. Another thing that Incas would have had is beans. So yeah, let's get rid of the modern tin. See, beans. Beans. Inca diet's quite nice, eh? Very healthy. And bananas are a little bit disputed, but they apparently had bananas. So, yep. They probably had bananas. Yeah, they would have had bananas. But all sorts of different types of bananas. So the Inca most common method of cooking was boiling their potatoes. But I can imagine an Inca out here on campaign against the jungle people, perhaps, would have probably eaten a raw potato. So do you want to try? I've never eaten a raw sweet potato. This is a sweet potato. I've never eaten a raw sweet potato. Shall we try? So imagine I'm here, Patricuti's campaigns. Oh. Oh. Hello. Oh dear. You don't want Inca food, doggy. Us Incas didn't eat a lot of meat. And it's true, the Incas didn't eat a lot of meat. They would have had guinea pig and llama meat, but not very common. You see, I sacrificed my llama to Inti the other day, so that's why. No llama meat. Can I sacrifice you? I mean, I can do it right now if you want. Nah, you're too cute. And the future person will get angry. Must not anger future person. Your owner's calling, eh? So yeah, Inca staple diet. The raw potato is actually not too bad, eh? It's palatable, and it's nutritious and gives you energy. I would eat raw potatoes if I had to, but you ideally do want to cook it. Much better when it's cooked. It's it's very juicy, eh? Well, much juicier than I thought. It's not like an apple, but it's a bit like an apple in terms of texture. I wonder why languages have potatoes labeled as aardappels, earth apples. Many of the Germanic languages. So, and we have potatoes and corn to thank. We have the Incas to thank for corn and potatoes. All because Columbus opened Europe to the Americas, we now have potatoes and corn. And it feeds millions worldwide. So a big piece of history, huh? Very big piece of history. So, the last surprise is the following. Have a look. I've got something so awesome in my hand. It is amazing. It is literally the whole effective writing system of the Incas, the system of documenting. Do you want to know what it is? String. It's true, string. The Incas used string. And as I was touching with eating is, you know, what accent do I pull with the Inca outfits? The thing is, we don't know, because when the Spanish conquered the Incas, they were quite thorough to erase the Inca Empire. There's no good in having slaves work your silver mines if they have ideas of a heritage of them being a great empire once. So it's very sad to see there's a lack of records, but there were many Spaniards commissioned to document and write about the native people they had conquered. So there's actually a book about the Aztecs, very comprehensive, with drawings commissioned by people from the former Aztec empire. And there are records, but there's just a lot of lack of records. And one thing is the language. So the Inca language survives today as Quechua. Quechua is a language spoken by very few people in Peru and the Andes. So Quechua has got a lot of ch sounds. Pachacuti, Huascar, and Atahualpa, those type of sounds. So Quechua is a very endangered language, but efforts are apparently happening in modern day Peru to preserve Quechua, so I don't think it will go extinct, but to have the record will be great. But most people in Peru speak Spanish. Obviously, we know why. So as to which accent I pull, should I do a Spanish accent with the Inca outfit? See? No, it doesn't work. But I've seen a few interviews of Inca people, and I'm battling here. I think I'd rather not make a fool of myself and rather show you when I've learned it better. But like, Quacha, Pachachi, Kuchutapa, Pachakuti. Or like Age of Empires, Yais Pichisha. So yeah, and there's also that Hollywood accent where you speak a bit like an American with the like that. My name is Guacamaya, and I come from the Inca Empire. It's that where's the history in that? So yeah, I think I don't really know what accent to speak with this outfit yet, but that's the thing I'm working on. So the string is literally the way the Incas recorded their history. It's called Quipu. So Quipu is a system of knots in the string. That's what Quipu translates to from Quechua, Inca Quechua. Simply knots in the string relay information. So boom, here's a knot, information. So there's a whole decimal system. It was based on a decimal system where I think like 1 knot is 10 and then 2 knots is 20. But how to denote between hundreds and thousands, they were different, independently invented. And you might say, what a coincidence again, just like Viracocha and the ending of the world. What a coincidence they use a decimal system. Now, the reason is because this Homo sapiens, have 10 fingers. So, yeah. Interesting. So Quipu would be a system of tying knots on a rope and the way the knots are tied and even a style, like there's a figure 8 type of knot or something. I don't know. And what would happen is all this information would be safeguarded by a runner like me, and I would run across the vast highways of the Inca Empire to relay the information. The Inca Empire was famous for its highways. That's how the empire became so efficient. They would have highways, and every 22 miles, roughly, would be an outpost with government-sponsored supplies. There was no money in the Inca Empire, but their form of currency was service. So a man like me would give service or goods to the central government, and the government would distribute everything as a collective. It is a bit similar to communism in a way, sort of. So the Inca Empire was a very efficient empire. It's no wonder it expanded so incredibly in 100 years. But like I say, its biggest weakness was that it hadn't got iron. It expanded so quickly that it didn't have enough time to consolidate. So hence a civil war between Atahualpa and Huascar leaves it vulnerable to Spanish invasion. And of course, simply said that, there was just no immunity to smallpox. Smallpox. You thinking the Incas died to the Spanish musket and steel? Nope. 90% of the Inca population died to smallpox. 90%. That was nearly 10 million people. 10 million was the Inca Empire at its height. So about, 9, maybe 10 million people died of smallpox. Yeah, crazy, huh? Crazy to think about those numbers. So this was me bringing back to life an extinct and long-lost empire, the Inca Empire. And the outfit literally covers time from Pachacuti, 1400s, because the tunic style is very 1400s. up until Spanish conquest and the end. If you want to do more of a late impression, like the guerrilla war between the Spanish, which I'd like, simply just carry a musket, because the Inca started to adopt muskets and horses. So imagine Inca with a musket and a horse fighting the Spanish in guerrilla style. There, you can do that, but keep the outfits, yeah? Cool, hey? So I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse as a more militaristic look on an Inca man. And I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, never forget history, yeah? I've had as much fun making this outfit as I hope you've had watching the video. I literally spent weeks making this, getting it ready. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Without further ado, oh, goodbye.